this elderly person discovered something terrifying at the nursing home. Every day, she had to swallow hundreds of identical pills, supposedly to keep them forever young. However, there was a dark secret behind it all, as the privileged elderly were receiving special care. Despite being a 7-star nursing home, the children had no visitation rights. In order to see his mother, the man was forced to take them to court, claiming it was blatant kidnapping. Not only did the nursing home sell his mother's house, but they also auctioned off their family heirlooms. But before the judge could speak, the company's CEO voiced his opposition. The woman admitted to managing the elderly's finances, but only because the children refused to care for them in the first place. They legally obtained guardianship over the elderly and authorized decisions regarding their assets. The fundamental reason lies in the choices the children made in the first place. Marla even pleaded with the judge to strip the man of his visitation rights, claiming he was an unfilial and despicable son. Upon verifying Marla's claims, the judge promptly granted her request. Marla appeared to be a shining example of a caring individual, but behind the scenes, she was a despicable villain. She owned the largest 7-star nursing home in the area, but behind the scenes, she engaged in unsavory activities. These elderly people were her cash cows, and she classified them based on their wealth with different colored tags. Deceased individuals held no value to her and were simply discarded in the trash, which also meant there had to be a constant influx of new elderly residents. Additionally, she bribed doctors and hospitals to obtain first-hand information about the elderly. She would then select the wealthiest one and forge documents stating their incapacity to care for themselves.
No family at all.
No living family. She has no kids, no husband.
It was tailor-made for them, bypassing many unnecessary procedures. Soon, her assistant began investigating the backgrounds of the elderly, and as the doctors had claimed, they were dripping with wealth, making them excellent cash cows. However, they faced a challenging problem now. Since the elderly were currently independent, they would never choose to go to a nursing home. But Marla had a solution. She first made a call to the doctor, resulting in a fake medical record being produced. Then, Marla applied to the court for guardianship, claiming the elderly were incapacitated.
She is at high risk if left alone in her own home, except us.
Okay, Miss Grayson.
In the United States, children are not obligated to care for their parents. After considering Marla's suggestion, the judge promptly awarded guardianship to the nursing home. With all the formalities in place, they soon knocked on the door of the elderly. Marla lied, pretending to be a salesperson, and convinced Jennifer to let her guard down. However, once the door was opened, Marla presented the court's judgment. Upon seeing it, Jennifer burst into laughter, believing that they must have made a mistake. She considered herself in excellent health and far from being senile. How could she be declared as having dementia? But legally, Marla had become her sole guardian, which meant the elderly had to comply with her arrangements. Jennifer found it absurd and wanted to refuse. However, Marla once again used legal threats against her and gestured for her to look outside. When Jennifer saw the police standing by the roadside, she was completely dumbfounded. Seizing the opportunity, Marla began to manipulate the elderly woman. She said that if there were any doubts, they could apply for the court to overturn the decision. But for now, non-compliance would be seen as disobedience, and the police outside would enforce it. Jennifer had no choice but to pack her belongings, thinking that she would only stay there for a few days. Little did she know that once she went in, she would never be able to come out again. The nursing home received Jennifer with the highest level of courtesy, but she quickly realized that she had been deceived. Not only did they restrict her freedom, but they also confiscated her phone, cutting off her communication with the outside world completely. And now, Marla's next move was to start absorbing the elderly's assets. They hired a lawyer to handle the liquidation, categorizing and packaging everything for sale. Soon, the villa welcomed new owners, and as for the vintage antiques, the best option was to send them to an auction house. In a matter of days, Marla had devoured all of the elderly's assets. Then, she went to the bank and successfully withdrew billions of dollars in cash under her guardian status. But what surprised her even more was when she found an empty Bible in the bank's safe deposit box. It was evident that the unregistered diamonds were missing. However, faced with these illicit items, Marla seemed even more thrilled. She satisfiedly pocketed the diamonds. Meanwhile, Jennifer was in a dire situation. When she tried to leave, she realized she had no control over her own actions. She was even denied the ability to make phone calls. However, the nursing home was unaware that they had bitten off more than they could chew because Jennifer had concealed her true identity. She had an unassuming-looking son, but despite his height of less than 5 feet, He was a complete little devil. Roman engaged in some shady business dealings to ensure he wouldn't bring trouble to his mother. They could only meet once a month, and for that occasion, Roman would carefully select gifts for his mother. However, when the driver arrived at the villa on time, they found it empty and abandoned. The driver was dumbfounded, knowing that if the boss found out they hadn't picked up Jennifer, he would surely face severe consequences. But intimidated by Roman's influence, the driver timidly explained the situation. For 7 years, Jennifer had never been late. Enraged, Roman pulled out his gun and gave the driver a choice: either go to hell or find his mother. Meanwhile, Marla was still unaware of the impending trouble she would face. She and her assistant were discussing where to go on vacation when Roman received a lead. Learning that Marla had sold off all the assets, Roman was furious. However, due to his social status, he didn't want to bring trouble to his mother, so he sent a lawyer to retrieve her. Upon seeing the walls adorned with photos of the elderly, the lawyer understood the nursing home's deceitful operations. He signaled that Marla had offended someone she shouldn't have, but clearly, she wasn't one to be messed with. She held the court's judgment in her hands, legally making her the guardian. Why would she give up this cash cow? It seemed that threats wouldn't work on Marla, so the lawyer reluctantly proposed a settlement, offering $150,000 as a compromise. But Marla became even more intrigued upon realizing that Jennifer's background was not simple at all.
I'm saying no. Thank you.
Are you saying no?
I'm saying no.
The lawyer left empty-handed, and before leaving, he could only threaten her not to leave after work. This piqued Marla's interest even more, and she began to investigate Jennifer's background. Thinking about the unidentified diamonds, she believed she had hooked a big fish this time. Marla started getting closer to Jennifer, subtly inquiring about the lawyer's origins, but Jennifer responded with a counter-question. When she learned that it was after the beginning of the month, Jennifer displayed a confident smile, followed by a cryptic remark.
Just you wait.
Really? Why?
Yeah, he's coming. You're in trouble now.
Marla grew visibly nervous, while Jennifer's gaze turned as if she were staring at a dead person. Frustrated, Marla lost her composure. She decided to increase the dosage of medication, hoping to make Jennifer reveal the truth. Meanwhile, Roman disguised himself and went to the bank. However, when he opened the safe deposit box, he discovered that the diamonds were already gone. He intended to make that woman pay for it. The lawyer wanted to reclaim guardianship through legal means, presenting various evidence to prove that Marla had used illegal methods for personal gain. But the lawyer underestimated Marla once again. She turned the tables, accusing him of being a fraud and unable to produce Jennifer's power of attorney, because there was no evidence to prove that he was entrusted by the party involved or their relatives. The lawyer instantly hit a wall, as he couldn't bring up that unforgivable son as proof. In comparison, Marla had all the necessary documents, and the judge swiftly pronounced the verdict. This infuriated Roman to no end, and he nearly threw the lawyer out the window. If he couldn't retrieve his mother through legal means, there was only one option left. Roman decided to take matters into his own hands and ordered his subordinates to investigate the nursing home. Pretending they were bringing their parents there, his henchmen first took care of the guards and finally managed to see Jennifer. However, they clashed with the security staff, and several of his men fell one after another. Just as his henchman was about to leave with Jennifer, they fell into an ambush set by Marla right at the exit. The police quickly arrived, and Roman could only watch helplessly as his mother was taken away once again. Roman's eyes were bloodshot with anger, and he vowed to raze the place to the ground. Not even Jesus could save that woman. Soon, Marla saw in the news that the unscrupulous doctor had met a gruesome end at home. The assistant panicked upon learning this. She knew she had angered the wrong person and started packing her bags to escape. But Marla had no intention of stopping there. She angrily sought out Jennifer and continuously provoked the elderly woman with her words. When Marla learned that Jennifer's son was a member of the Russian mafia, she was completely dumbfounded. But the word defeat was not in her dictionary. Not only did she want to drain the old woman's wealth, but she also wanted to trample on her dignity. However, Jennifer remained silent, giving Marla another meaningful glance. Nevertheless, Marla escalated her tactics and continued to verbally provoke the elderly woman. Unexpectedly, the frail old lady slowly walked behind her and locked her hands around Marla's neck, choking her. This was exactly what the woman desired. As the surveillance recorded Jennifer's every move, the judge also deemed the elderly woman extremely dangerous, especially with Marla fanning the flames nearby, and Jennifer was sent to a government psychiatric hospital. With this outcome, even if Roman had incredible abilities, it would be impossible for him to rescue his mother through force. Marla believed that she was finally free from trouble. As she prepared to enjoy her freedom with her assistant, suddenly, she felt a chilling sensation on her back. Marla looked down and saw a large needle embedded in her thigh. Before she could react, a woman approached her and forcefully shoved her into the trunk of a car. On the other hand, the assistant couldn't escape either as the assassins stormed into her villa. The two burly men pounced on her, pinning her down and unleashing a brutal beating. When Marla regained consciousness from her daze, she truly experienced the terror of Roman. Before she could speak, a hood was placed over her head, and the sensation of suffocation instantly spread throughout her body. Roman had been waiting for Marla's awakening, and his henchmen removed her hood once again. Roman not only wanted to retrieve his mother but also reclaim everything he had lost. Using Marla's mother as leverage, he didn't expect this fearless woman to remain so composed. Instead, she began negotiating conditions with him. Marla threatened that he must offer a benefit of 10 million or he would never see a diamond, but her little scheme was about to fail this time. Roman could do without the diamond, but Marla had to die. His henchmen sedated her once more, and then they inserted a tube into her nostril, injecting a large amount of alcohol through the tube. They placed Marla in the car. They released the handbrake, stepped on the accelerator, and placed a bottle of liquor beside her. They intended to create the illusion of a drunken woman's demise. Soon, the car plunged into the lake. Marla was jolted awake by the violent impact, realizing that the water had already risen above her neck. Unexpectedly, she shattered the glass at the last moment and managed to escape. Marla didn't dare to stop for a moment as she hurried back home, the room filled with a pungent smell. Fortunately, she discovered her barely conscious assistant and pulled her back from the brink of death. The assistant told her they couldn't defeat Roman and urged Marla to give up, but she refused to surrender because Marla still held leverage over him. They successfully tracked down the driver's residence using his car's license plate number. They followed him closely, and when they saw him enter a parking lot, Marla once again disguised herself, pretending to ask for directions. With the driver off guard, she stunned him with an electric shock. At that moment, Roman happened to come out, but he never expected what was coming. Marla suddenly appeared and injected Roman with a needle, then took care of the guards. The mighty head of the Russian mafia was defeated by Marla alone. However, she didn't want to commit murder. To humiliate Roman, they stripped him naked and left him on the side of the road. Soon, he was discovered by a passerby. When Roman regained consciousness once again, Marla had been waiting for this moment, watching Roman with tubes inserted all over his body, and a smug smile appeared on her face. Then, she used the same trick again and presented a forged document. Marla successfully obtained custody of Roman. She began demanding exorbitant prices, threatening him that if he didn't meet her demands, he would be sent to a psychiatric hospital to accompany his mother. Thinking about spending the rest of his life in permanent confinement, Roman had no choice but to surrender, but he proposed a cunning idea. If Marla could get his mother out of the psychiatric hospital, he would add 10 more small targets. These additional targets would be invested in Marla's nursing home project, expanding her guardian system nationwide. If Marla agreed, they could control all the elderly in the United States within 1 year, making them the wealthiest individuals in the world. Marla had no reason to refuse Roman's conditions. Soon, she brought Jennifer out, while Roman operated behind the scenes. Marla quickly became the world's wealthiest person, reaching the pinnacle of her life. She not only appeared on the cover of Time magazine but also frequently accepted media interviews. However, just as she was enjoying this sudden happiness, the child of the elderly person she had caused to die came looking for her. A gunshot ended her life of sin, and Roman became the ultimate winner, laughing last.